Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be discussing a unique friend of the show, an interesting person when they were alive. They have been dead for quite some time, but they did have an extraordinary show that is also dead, and it was quite scary. It was quite hair raising. It was quite absurd, to say the very least. They also had a successful comic book series for a time. We are, of course, talking about our good friend, the Crypt Keeper. No, the person is not really a real person. This is a fictional character. This is a Halloween-themed month of episodes. So if you thought we were actually talking about someone who passed away, well, no. No, we would not give our friends that much credit. Okay, now we're canceled. There we go. There we go. Chris and Rob don't have respect for the deceased. Well, that's not true, because the Crypt Keeper was a wonderful person. In fact, they spread the gift of laughter and terror at the same time. They were a unique being, and now they're just they're in a box somewhere. Not underground, just in a studio, not being used, or in a museum, just also not being used, or in someone's house, possibly being used, or just in a box, not being used. Either way, the Crypt Keeper is somewhere where it's not, it's a crypt of some kind, but not really. But we are talking about the Tales of the Crypt show, not to be confused with Tales from the Crypts, which is actually a real movie series on Tubi, where you can also find the animated series that would air on Saturdays, the Tales from the Crypt Keeper, which we will also get into a little bit. Ooh, there's several apartments across the way from me that their lights are on at the same time, where it resembles a scary face. It's quite haunting. Speaking of things that are quite haunting, we are Why Does This Exist? We are a show that talks about the very weirdest of pop culture, whether it's a TV show, like we are about to speak about a comic book, which this TV show spawned from. Speaking of things, we plan to do Spawn at some point. Or also if it is a video game or anything bizarre or strange, past, present, and future, we will eventually speak about it. This is Why Does This Exist? You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're gonna support us in that way, please leave a 5-star rating and just tell everyone this guy is cool. Whether you do it in Hindi or not, I don't care. But do that for us, and we will continue to pump out more episodes for you. You can also support us on our YouTube channel by simply going to the channel Why Does This Exist with a question mark at the end and subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing, disliking. Just do something, because then people on YouTube will find it and show it to more people. That's how it works. It really doesn't matter how you interact as long as you engage. Speaking of engage, I have no segue for that, but you can actually engage with us in another way by giving us your cold hard cash, your your hold card cash is something completely different that I'm not really sure what exactly it is. Maybe if you're in Bosnia, you might understand what that means. Or Nigeria, where we were once number one for a month in August. Why, I have no idea, but we still get listens from Nigeria. Anyway.
Your cards and give us cash.
I suppose. In an all-cash business, I suppose that's how that works.
Yeah.
But you can give us your money by heading over to patreon.com/whydoesthisexist, and that is very, very nice. You can also find us at, and you can give us as little as $1 or as much as however you want. And you'll be part of the Discord server and part of the team, and you can talk to us, and you can tell us everything that you hate about this show. And we have to sit there and take it. So how about that? It's $1 to trash talk us. So maybe if you're having an extra bad day, maybe you give us $10 and you really let us have it. Anyway, you can also find us on social media. That's twitter.com/WDTEpod. We don't really take a look at that much because Twitter is an abyss. And we are a bit active on Facebook, facebook.com/whydoesthisexistpod, where people tend to tag us when they find very bizarre things, such as this fella named Muhammad who tagged us on a video of someone making a buff cakes. Buff cakes. Just cakes where they are cut into the shape of bodybuilder males, and the heads are strange characters. So they sent us a video of someone baking a buff Baby Yoda cake. It was quite strange. It had nipples on it too. I'm not sure why, but it was funny. Anyway, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Take it away, Rob.
All right. Well, Tales from the Crypt it was originally a pulp magazine, which, for those who don't know, it was like a cheap comic book kind of thing from like the early 50s and
late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, oftentimes they focused on horror themes or detective stories, things that were kind of considered sleazy at the time, I guess.
Yes, those came out of the war because in the 30s and late we got the golden age of comics that really started up, and we get your first Supermans, your early superheroes, Superman, Batman, and even a Green Lantern or two who was allergic to wood, basically. And you got all kinds of superheroes. And around the 40s, because of World War II and everything, many of the soldiers came back looking for something a little more gritty, and the teenage demographic also was not really that interested in superheroes. The comic book world tended to shift a little bit, and they wanted something realistic and they wanted something gritty. So the interest shifted to three things: horror, noir, and anything erotic of some kind.
Yes.
Which I guess is kind of the birth of the porn industry in its own way too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
this was also so. It was, that's why we had all these series coming out at this time, like Tales from the Crypt, Detective Comics, and etc. So it basically was just like a horror themed comic. It was hosted, it had three different hosts. Most famous was the Crypt Keeper, and that's basically the one that everybody knows of, that was the host of the TV show as well. But there was also the Vault Keeper and the Old Witch, who also, I believe, made appearances on the TV show.
Yes, they did in the second season of the of Tales from the Crypt Keeper, I believe.
Yes,
where they kept trying to vie over. They kept dueling with the Crypt Keeper over hosting duties of the show.
Yes,
which they almost never won.
Yeah, well, and that was even true during the comic times. Mm-hmm. Like, the Crypt Keeper was by far the most popular of the three hosts, quote unquote, and hosted the most of the comics. But the series was ended in the mid 50s after there was the congressional hearings on juvenile delinquency in the 50s, which caused the Comics Code to come into effect.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Congress decided that comics and other forms of media were too violent and were causing children to be juvenile delinquents, and so they were going to either censor them or ban them or do other things of that nature. And EC Comics, which was the publisher of Tales from the Crypt, ended the series due to that.
Because the one of the creators, I forget if it was Al Fieldstein or
Bill Gaines.
Bill Gaines. It might have been him. He felt that it was a targeted effort. That he felt like Tales from the Crypt was specifically targeted in this.
Yeah,
and that he just saw the writing on the wall and just said, you know what, they're like these for lack of a better term, these assholes are like trying to kill my publication, and now there's nothing that I can do about it without changing it completely, and it just that doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm just going to have to shut it down before they can shut me down. But Tales from the Crypt, it wasn't Tales of the Crypt officially until its 20th episode, until its 20th issue.
Yes.
There were 47 total issues of the comic, but it originally started Tales from the Crypt's name was a Feldstein story, called Return from the Grave in one of the other EC comics, Crime Patrol. So it originally was a different title, and it was originally under a different title. So it went from Crime Patrol to the Crypt of Terror, and then around issue 17, because the horror elements was what people were buying it for. So it went from noir to the terror stuff. And then it eventually became Tales from the Crypt, and they didn't discontinue the Crypt of Terror. They just changed the name inexplicably with issue 20. Yeah. And that was just how it was. It was just cheaper to do that. So they just went with it, and the people who were buying it didn't care, because then they absolutely knew that it was definitely what they wanted, so they continued to buy it. And they were going to launch a second series called they were going to release a second series, and they were going to reactivate it as the Crypt of Terror again. And there was only really one issue as the Crypt of Terror from the new one, and it's they only did 46 issues, and the Crypt of Terror was the final issue of Tales from the Crypt, because it was already produced before they ended up shutting it down, Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein. But it's been reprinted a ton of times, and it by various publications such as Dark Horse and various other places, and because of the whole nostalgia revival, and even Marvel actually revived it in 2007, creating new Tales from the Crypt comics, and there've been a ton of these things, and Paper Cuts does it too, until about September 28th, 2010, and then in 2016, Super Genius relaunched Tales from the Crypt for 2 issues. So there's been various times for Tales from the Crypt to come back from the dead, to not even to make a pun, but that's seriously what happened. It's been continually revived because there's so much love and fanfare for this. Yeah. And also it's just a very profitable title, as we will get to, because people might not know it from the comic book origins. What we are going to get into, and what this episode is primarily about, is the Tales from the Crypt TV series on HBO. Yeah. Where the Crypt Keeper would not be as influential in pop culture today without the voice of John Kassir.
Yes.
He is the reason that you watched that show.
Yeah.
And anything Crypt Keeper related, you wanted to hear him bring this corpse to life. Yes. And he really did. He's unbelievably talented. He's done a ton of stuff, but everyone will know and love him as the Crypt Keeper. And I don't even know how this guy did it. It's such a screechy, high-pitched, perfect voice, and it's creepy.
Yes.
And it just couldn't, there's nothing that could be better than that. And on top of that, Danny Elfman, of course, did the theme song for this because Danny Elfman did every theme song in the 90s. Him and Mark Mothers, pretty much him and Mark Mothersbaugh. Yeah. Created the music of your childhood if you're from the 90s. If you were a 90s kid. And maybe there's a couple of other people here and there, but for the most part, I would say 90% of the work went to Danny Elfman and Mark Mothersbaugh when it came to composing music.
Well, especially
for TV and film.
These dark things, like the dark kind of either horror or noirish things. Danny Elfman did Beetlejuice. He did Batman, the Tim Burton Batman, and
Nightmare Before Christmas. Batman. I mean, pretty much anything with Tim Burton he was attached to.
Yeah, him and Tim Burton were really friends or something.
Yeah, they were they were pretty much connected at the hip.
Yeah, they really were.
With projects, you weren't it was almost like they were a package deal, but I guess you could say they were an unofficial package deal.
Yeah.
And Mark Mothersbaugh, of course, did a lot of the. He did pretty much everything exclusively on Nickelodeon.
Yeah. He was the drummer of Devo?
I think he was the bass player.
The bass player, okay. Yeah, it was I'm thinking of the drummer of the Police who did the music for Spyro the Dragon.
Oh no, that we talked about Stuart Copeland.
Yeah, Stuart Copeland.
On the Spyro episode, a couple episodes back, kids.
Yes. So go check it out.
Yeah, why not?
But yeah, so Tales of the Crypt, the series. Well, first there was a movie that came out in 1972. It was a British film, anthology horror film. So that was kind of it showed that there was still interest in Tales from the Crypt, despite the fact that it had been defunct for years by this point. So, they had that, and then of course they brought back, like you said, the HBO series, which ran from 1989 to 1996. The HBO series, like you said, is the most well-known, I think, media of Tales from the Crypt. Everybody knows the Crypt Keeper from that, like you said, and everybody knows those stories specifically, because there aren't many horror anthology TV shows. There used to be a couple back in the 70s and the 80s and even the 60s. You think about the Twilight Zone, stuff like that. There's that other one that was it I forget what it's called. Tales from the something.
Tales from the Dark Side?
Yeah, Tales from the Dark Side. That was another one.
And then you had a couple for the kids in the... they came back a little bit in the 90s for kids with Goosebumps Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah. But it really was, Tales from the Crypt was, really the mainstay in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And it was interesting because it evolved kind of over this it evolved over kind of several genres over the years. It wasn't just straight up horror, scare you kind of it was a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor in it.
Yes, and it was a lot of times it got psychological.
Yes, it was oftentimes psychological, but it was interesting because every episode, they obviously has psychological thrills and it's trying to scare you, but every episode also has this comedy factor to it also.
Yes.
So it was interesting the way they combined horror and comedy in such a way is that you could still get a scare from the show, but also laugh at it at the same time,
Yeah, the dialogue is the dialogue is such a product of its time.
Yes.
That it's ridiculously absurd. There were certain jokes where it was racial humor, on certain episodes, and there were like other or very like sexist humor from the like where it was just jokes that you really could not see happening today on anything that wasn't called South Park, where like then you just saw it freely on a lot of programs, and it was, you know, and sometimes you would occasionally hear it too from people, but it is such a product of its time. And I think that's what kind of helped makes it work in its own way for now, where I think the funniest thing about this was I was terrified of the Crypt Keeper as a kid. They would show reruns like right after the Saturday morning cartoons in like the mid to late 90s. They would show a lot of of course they would be censored for basic cable, because on HBO they could get away with whatever they want. Where it was heavily censored. But as a kid, I was terrified of the Crypt Keeper, and I would try to shut the TV off right before, because I forgot what came on beforehand, but before that on Channel 11. It might have been Animaniacs, might have been the headliner for Saturday morning cartoons, and then once noon hit, they put on Tales from the Crypt as like the segue into like the teenagers or adults. Yeah. And every time I saw the Crypt Keeper, I was terrified. And every once in a while, they would have the Crypt Keeper host, they would have him host the Saturday morning cartoons because of some kind of sponsorship deal or whatever the hell it was, because it was around Halloween. And I would hate those. I would hate those episodes, because I knew I would be sitting through this and watching it anyway, but I would be terrified when the Crypt Keeper popped up, because two kids, he is pretty creepy looking. It's a puppet, but it's a creepy puppet, and they have the perfect voice for it. So of course it's pretty unsettling. But watching this for the first time ever within the last couple of days as an adult in my 30s, I could not stop laughing at how ridiculous this show is and how absurd the Crypt Keeper is, where I was just like, I was afraid of this? This is what kept me up at night?
Yeah. I don't remember being scared of the Crypt Keeper when I was a kid. You know, obviously I knew who it was, and I probably had watched Tales.
I knew people who were creepier than this.
Yeah, like, it didn't really, like, bother me, though, like, at all. Like, I don't, like... At least I don't remember ever being scared of it.
I was friends with someone who bore a striking resemblance of the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, so I like, you know, and I think I remember what you remember, like with the Crypt Keeper coming on after Saturday morning cartoons specifically, because I don't think, like, I might have watched Tales from the Crypt Keeper, the cartoon, but I don't really remember. It was like, if I did watch it, it was a long time ago. I think I more recently remember the Crypt Keeper coming on after Saturday morning cartoons.
I vaguely remember only seeing the opening credits of the new adventures of the new Tales from the Crypt Keeper. Which was the 1999 revival. I remember vaguely seeing the opening credits, and there's like a short clip where a bunch of spiders are descending from the ceiling, and that was enough for me, so I never watched the show. And of course I watched it a few days ago, and I was like, okay, this was another thing. Why the hell was I afraid of this? It was just a quick cut in the freaking in the theme song.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I guess for me it was like, okay, well, there's the off chance that they might have that episode on, so I'm just not going to watch it at all.
Yeah. Well, even like the regular series, though, like I had watched it at a couple episodes while we, doing research for this, and like it wasn't like overly scary. Like I could see it would be too much for a little kid. But I think if I had watched it when I was like 10 or 11, I probably would have been fine. Like it was like a little creepy, but it wasn't like to that point. It wasn't like watching like Halloween, like the movie, or something where that was like legitimately scary. And I saw that when I was a kid, and I was like freaked out.
Oh no, I hadn't seen that until I seen it as an adult, because my dad. My dad like child-proofed everything. Like if you said hell, you were grounded for like a month. He tried to keep a very squeaky clean house. The Simpsons had been banned and unbanned multiple times because they said something he didn't like.
I think I specifically used to I saw it because they used to do like on one of those like movie channels like that were on like basic cable like AMC or something like that. On like Halloween they would do like a marathon of like the old like like horror movies. Like they would do like
we also didn't have cable until I was like 12 or 13.
Oh yeah. So they would do a Halloween marathon. So I saw Halloween when I was like probably like around that 10 or 11 maybe, and that's why
it's a little much.
So it was kind of like they didn't show like the sex scenes and stuff obviously because it was on like basic cable, but they showed like the murders. Obviously they had to because it was So that's why like going back, I don't think of the episodes that I watched at least, I don't think I would have been like overtly afraid of them as a kid. But like I could see like a kid being scared of them, so I understand what like Tales from the Crypt Keeper what they were trying to do. Obviously it was very heavily toned down, and apparently there, according to Wikipedia at least, there was actually a child psychologist on staff that would review the scripts and make sure it was okay for kids.
Yeah, which they didn't always like because they felt that he was toning down a lot of what they were doing, and it was unnecessary.
Yeah,
but I mean, we've seen this with censors and everything, and like just network people that they will do that. But there's a lot of things that they'll probably let slip under the radar that are worse than what they're actually censoring. So
yeah,
it really depends on who's doing what.
It really depends on the kid though too. That's the thing. Like you can't like say like every kid's gonna react the same because like there's kids that would think like Ghostbusters is a scary movie,
right?
And it's really not that scary. Like it's got a couple of scary parts, but it's not like overtly like a horror movie,
right? So, I mean, you have to just assume that. You have to just go by statistics when you're doing something like that, and like statistically, if the majority of children in whatever study that you're referring to, which whether or not you're trying to find a study that's pro whatever angle you're trying to get at or whatever it is, that's irrelevant. If you're trying to just hone in on a majority of whatever research you're trying to cite, so you can't so you would have to say a majority of children would be sensitive to this, so you can't have that in the episode. Yeah. But the other thing was that the Tales from the Crypt Keeper show was more or less about teaching children lessons.
Yes.
So I think there's one episode where they're bullying this girl, and the girl she just moved into town. These two boys are bullying this girl, and she gets an imaginary friend, and the imaginary friend is of course a ghost, and the ghost takes care of the bullies and starts scaring them and everything, and they go and apologize to her, and then she forgives them, and they're like, we're not going to be mean to you anymore, and the ghost and the imaginary friend goes away to probably help some other kid, or maybe it switches universes and it becomes murderous in the live action show. I have no idea, but that's just one example where in the regular Crypt Keeper, sometimes it is like there might be an underlying thing, but usually it's just all calamity is going to happen, and Murphy's Law of Terror happens to all these people. I think a lot of them get what they deserve, though.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, like, it's really more about, like, people that are, like, bad or, like, are scummy in some way, kind of get their comeuppance in Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, which was something that you'd see a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, was just, the guy who wasn't a great... Well, I mean, you wouldn't even see that 90s, early 2000s. You would see that well before, up until probably more recent times, where the bad guys just kind of get their way and nothing happens to them, which, like, I guess you could say that's a lot more realistic, but it's always that
modernist, like, idea of, like, everything's got to be like how real life is, and oftentimes in real life the bad guy has to get away, and that's just like how it is. So
but a lot of times there's in anything previous, including this, the bad guys usually still get what's coming to them.
Yes,
I would say the episode comes to a satisfying conclusion. Sometimes it's just hilarious. Like, I would say the writing is very clunky throughout the series. It gets, especially in the earlier seasons, things just kind of happen with no explanation, or things will happen way too quickly where it's illogical, but the show's not supposed to be. Where in the later seasons, it makes a little bit more sense. I mean, not a whole lot, but it makes a little bit more sense. They are trying even more ridiculous things, because it almost seems like the writers of the show and producers of the show are like, holy crap, they greenlit another season. Let's keep pushing that envelope.
Yeah. Well,
which is what you should be doing.
They're also kind of trying to fit like a whole bunch of a whole story into it. They're only half-hour episodes, which
right? They're very short
for like HBO shows. Like, HBO shows are generally an hour long. But again, this was like a different time on HBO. It was the 90s, so
Yeah, HBO was still it was still on its way to dominating cable.
Yeah.
So they were at this point. They were pretty much just throwing. They were pretty much just greenlighting anything and just giving it carte blanche to just be R-rated TV, so that way people could be allured to cable because of just the novelty of, they curse on cable, or, they show boobs on cable, or, they do this on cable. And Tales from the Crypt had all of that. It had violence, it had sex, it had everything. It wasn't like overt.
It wasn't like it is today. Like today, It's like you freaking watch Game of Thrones and it's like you're watching softcore pornography, essentially.
I mean, for that era, it was, for like the late 80s, early 90s, it was just seeing anything graphic.
Yeah, it was like when you saw a boob in a movie, it's like, like you're watching like an R-rated movie and they just show like a friggin' like nipple, briefly show a boob, and you're like, ooh. And then now it's like, oh, look, there's tits. Like, that's like,
or like
a PG-13 movies.
Basically, you're like in an older movie, like they would use their cursing sparingly, where now it's just all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, they could friggin' drop an F-bomb, and technically Beetlejuice drops an F-bomb, and it's rated PG, so.
Yeah.
But,
because you were only allowed one up until a certain point. Before you got slapped with before you got slapped with other ratings.
Yeah.
But there was also a ton of guest stars on this show, too.
Oh, yeah, it was, like, pretty much anybody who was anybody of, like, the 90s, like, acting scene, like, character actors was on this show. Plus, like, every friggin', like, so many, like, big-name Hollywood actors had, like, cameo appearances on episode.
But a lot of episodes are pretty terrible. Like, the acting is pretty bad in a lot of episodes.
Well, I think it's supposed to be purposely like that. They make it...
Probably.
So it's campy. It's very campy in that, like... kind of harkening back a little bit to the Twilight Zone, I think.
Yes, but there's more of a comedy element where the Twilight Zone is a little more serious.
Yes, it's very tongue in cheek the way they it is. Like, there's over the top characters, but they're over the top on purpose.
Right. Like one of the episodes I was watching, it was either season 6 or season 7 episode, and there's this married couple in the beginning, and the wife is the husband's like, all right, honey, I'm gonna go to work, and she's like, oh, she's like, oh, well, here's your breakfast, dear, and he's like, how do you do it? And she's like, well, I'm your wife, and that's kind of it. And she's like, oh, by the way, don't forget, we have a dinner party tonight at 7, and he leaves and he goes what we assume he goes to work, and then there's people waiting outside, and they pull up in like a black Cadillac or something, and they go into the house, and they're like, and they knock on her door, and they're like, your husband's a spy, he's an assassin, and he's, and she's like, not my husband, not John, and they're like, there is no John, it's Roland. And she's like, Roland? Who's Roland? And then it turns out that the agents are assassins, and Corey Feldman is like part of the cleanup crew for some reason. and they're trying to assassinate the wife, and the wife is she's like stumbling into accidentally assassinating the assassins, and then she tries to like do things, and she gets lucky in other instances. Sometimes she bumbles into it, and then she gets to the last one, which is the main one, which is this other woman, and they're fighting on the floor and everything, and she's like, I bet she's like, and she's like questioning her about Roland and everything, and she's like, I keep telling you, I have a 7:00 dinner, or I'm having guests over at 7:00. She's repeating this, and she's like oblivious to what's going on around her, and she's getting strangled and everything, and then she's like, I bet you don't even know what he likes in the bedroom. I bet you don't know that he likes being bit, that he likes being bit on the neck until he bleeds. And she's like, yeah, and then the wife like breaks character, and she's like, yes, he does. And then she like turns, and then like she keeps getting strangled, and then you hear a man's voice, and the woman who's doing the strangling like has this look of shock, and then it cuts to the wife, and the man's voice is coming from the wife, and the wife is like, I am Roland, Linda, and he like turns around, and of course he kills her, and then he cleans up everything, and it cuts to the dinner, and her husband is home. And it's it's ridiculous, but it was friggin' hilarious.
Yeah. There's one of the episodes I watched. I actually watched the first episode of the series, which was The Man Who Is Death, and basically William Sadler, who is a pretty famous character actor. He's been in a number of movies, Shawshank Redemption, Die Hard 2. He plays this guy that works at the jail as the executioner. Like basically, he just pulls the switch on the electric chair.
Good job. And good job to have, I guess. It probably pays well.
Well, yeah. I mean, he enjoys it.
I mean, you gotta pay. I'm sure you gotta pay something like decent for somebody to want to have to do that job.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do it, even though it is bad guys most of the time.
The whole episode, he's basically just like narrating like his whole like thing that he does and stuff, and it's like constantly him talking to the audience. So he's like, he's breaking the fourth wall and like talking directly to the camera and stuff a lot, basically like explaining everything. And then eventually the death penalty gets abolished.
Crap! They don't even pay them enough. I just Googled it. As of October 17th, 2022, the average now we've dated the episode. The average annual pay for an executioner in the United States is $53,825 a year. Just in case you need a simple salary calculator that works out to be about $25.88 an hour. That's not enough.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't a doctor administer the friggin' lethal injection? Like, how does that work? The doctor gets paid way more than that.
I'm sure.
They get paid that on top of being a doctor as well.
I don't know. I mean, do you make house calls? Are you specifically the prison doctor? Is that only or do they like have to bring in the executioner doctor?
Who knows?
Like, is that a separate medical profession? Well, is that like a side hustle?
It's like the opposite of being a doctor.
Yeah, is that like a side hustle? Well, I mean,
part of their oath is do no harm, and they're killing somebody.
Well, during the day, I'm a surgeon at St. John's, but my side hustle, I'm an executioner. I have to pay up my student loans.
Yeah,
like, is that how it works? Sorry, I save lives by day. I take them at night. It's a living and a dying. Yeah. Student debt is bad.
Anyway, this executioner, the death penalty gets abolished, and he decides to take it upon himself to like sit in court and watch trials, and for people that are trial for murder that get off because of a technicality or a mistrial or something, he goes and kills them anyway. by electrocution, because he's, he runs the electric chair, and eventually he starts just killing people
Go
just
figure.
for fun, and that's when he gets caught and he gets electrocuted himself. So he gets the poetic justice, so to speak,
in the exact prison that he used to work at, where he was the executioner. There's a technicality in the law that the law gets repealed.
Yeah.
To abolish the death penalty, of course, as he is getting caught.
Yeah. And it's funny because he like derides the people getting executed, like, oh, they always like freak out and say how they, just wait one more minute because the governor's going to call, blah, 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 blah. And then he like fries them anyway. And then he's like doing the same exact thing. So it's like really just shows up,
It kind of reminds me of the Twisted Metal endings.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's very much that, like, poetic justice, monkey's paw kind of thing, almost. The other episode that I watched was it was a later episode of season 4. It was called The New Arrival, and basically it was this radio psychologist. They said for those who are uninitiated that that don't listen to the radio or haven't listened to the radio. There used to be, talk shows on the radio as well as regular shows. And some of those talk shows, it would be like a psychologist who would go on and like take callers and try to help them with their mental health issues over the phone on the radio. So basically, this guy keeps getting calls from this same woman all the time and decides to finally visit her house because his show's about to be canceled because the ratings are low. And, Robert Patrick, the T-1000, makes a cameo appearance as the radio host that's, like, taking over his time slot, basically, because, he has better ratings. So he goes to this woman's house thinking that maybe he could, like, do the radio show from there and help her, like, crazy child. And also, like, at the same time, like, broadcast it so that way he can, like, get ratings again. And, anyway, as we get to the house, it kind of becomes, like, more and more obvious that something fishy is going on, that the woman is not, like, actually, like, it's an old woman, so, like, they're like, there's no way she has a young child, because she's, like, so old, and apparently, like, her husband fought in World War II, and, it's, like, doesn't make any sense. Well, they find out that after the child kills 2 of his companions, we find out that the child is actually an undead zombie that this woman takes care of.
Oh boy.
And she had, like, actually invited several other child psychologists there that were, like, all there skeletonized, sitting in chairs where this guy was. Basically implying that, like, no psychologist could help this, like, child who's an undead, crazy friggin' child that murders people. But it was interesting because, like, you don't really feel bad for, like, the psychologist guy because he's an asshole, and, like, so is everybody else. Like, the friggin', like, the one producer lady that goes with him is an asshole. She gets killed. Like, we pretty much don't care about anyone, and it's actually kind of good that they all die. But the mother was actually played by Zelda Rubinstein, who was famously in the Poltergeist series. I believe she was the medium. And she has that very distinctive, like, high-pitched voice. So it was a really good episode. And that one, I think, was more kind of, like, it had some of the tongue-in-cheek comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more a showcase of the psychological horror of Tales of the Crypt.
Mm. Yeah, there was a season 3 episode that we were watching. I forget what it was called, but it was Tim Roth, who is he has quite a few shows. One of the more recent ones was called Lie to Me. He is not Honey Bunny, but the other guy. In Pulp Fiction at the end in the diner, who are trying to rob the place.
Yeah.
He was also Abomination in the Ed Norton Hulk, which some would call an abomination, but it wasn't his fault. Anyway, I like Tim Roth. He's also in Reservoir Dogs, and he's in a couple of Tarantino movies.
Yeah.
He's a struggling artist who attends an AA meeting, and he's trying to get back on his feet, but he's not really doing great work while he's sober. He's very tense, and he's kind of got a bad streak in him that allegedly would come out when he was under the influence. He at least alludes to it, and someone someone tells him he should start drinking again or whatever. And there's also a woman in his AA meeting that's interested in him. But long story short, he inadvertently he's looking for inspiration, and there's a tenant below him who's just listening to loud music, and he can't concentrate. And in like a fit of rage, he inadvertently kills the guy, but he finds something beautiful in him dying. So he takes several pictures of it, and he paints the man's death. And he finds out, and there's like a collection being shown at the museum or art gallery that he's like moonlighting at. And the collector is some very rich guy who collects big pictures of people dead and dying. And he's looking for his crown jewels, basically. And he goes to him, and he goes to sell him the painting, which he complained how he can't sell a painting all year, which I don't know how he's paying for this art studio. I guess he must have hit it big when he was not sober or something. I don't know. And he just goes to sell this guy this painting for $200. And the guy, of course, gives him $20,000 and something. And then he's like, I want you to paint more of these. So he starts killing people and taking and painting them in their dying moments. And he starts painting with their blood and things. And then the girl finds out, and it gets out of hand. And then while the girl's running away from him, she gets hit by a car, and she gets taken into the hospital, and she's in critical condition. And the one surgeon that is supposed to go help her, Tim Roth is like, I really care about this woman. They end up sleeping together, and right after she finds out what he's doing, which it makes no sense, and then he tells her to wait there, and for some stupid reason she does hours later while he's committing another murder. So I don't even know. And the surgery's expensive, so he's like, that's okay, I'll do what I have to do to go to make it right. So he goes and he kills somebody. He goes and he kills the first person that he sees, and he goes and he paints it, and he brings the painting back to the art dealer, and he gets paid like $100,000 or whatever it is. And he goes to the hospital, and he's like, I've got the money. And they're like, well, it's unfortunate. And he's like, what do you mean? They're like, well, the only surgeon that could have saved her life, she's like in a coma. They're like, the only surgeon that could have saved her life was viciously murdered outside of the hospital a few hours ago. He's like, what? And then he's distraught. And then there's police in there, like right behind him. And they say, excuse me, sir, you happen to be an artist. You don't happen to be, are you an... You said you were an artist, and he's like, yeah, and they're holding the bloody paintbrush. So, and then it cuts to his look where he's like, oh crap. So, obviously he goes to jail, but you don't feel bad because he was a murdering lunatic, and he started drinking again, by the way. Just to let you know, he does start drinking again while he's painting. But the tongue-in-cheek humor it's there. It's funny. There's a lot of puns, and John Kassir as the Crypt Keeper makes sure that he makes plenty of puns.
Yes,
like during his intros and outros. Like the intro will always cut to the Crypt Keeper going into the Crypt Keeper's haunted mansion, and then it goes down to the basement, and you see the Crypt Keeper pop out of the coffin. He laughs, and then you get to the live action intro, which many shows in the 90s and late 80s famously had like a host for every episode. And There is no storyline. Every episode is different. It's an anthology, by the way. For those who don't know, and
there were a couple episodes that they did like that were multi-part episodes or whatever, but
yeah,
for the most part,
but they were few and far between.
Yeah.
But the Crypt Keeper would do his silly little intro where he would describe the story that you were about to see, and he'd have all kinds of wacky, hackneyed death puns and things like that. Like at the end of the art one, he would he's painting and he's like all dressed up like a snobby Picasso art thing, and he's painting with his little paintbrush and he's like dipping it in on his oil canvas. There's there's a beating heart over there, and he's like, "This is almost perfect. Just it's missing something." Oh wait, and he grabs a knife and he stabs the still beating heart, and he goes, "Oh, there we go. This still life is a masterpiece." And he just starts cracking up. Or like another part, he's like, some people like oils, some people like to paint with acrylics, but I prefer finger painting. And he's painting with someone's finger, like a severed finger. So there are all kinds of those things were there. But speaking of haunted, this ended up getting a game. This ended up getting various movies made, such as Bordello of Blood and Demon Knight. I have not seen those, but I imagine they're very similar, except just following one linear story instead of several. But it also, in addition to the 2 animated shows, the first one was the Tales from the Crypt Keeper, and then later on it got revived with a different animation style and slightly different team, known as the New Tales from the Crypt Keeper. But it also got a children's game show similar to Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, and more closely to Guts and Legends of the Hidden Temple, where kids would compete in an obstacle course and like brain challenges that were themed around the Crypt Keeper. And it was called Secrets of the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House, I believe.
Yes.
Where it was similar premise. Spooky things would happen out of nowhere, and the Crypt Keeper would pop in and out and narrate and like just make his little puns here and there. It was just okay. I would say the most superior children's game show was Legends of the Hidden Temple, but we'll get to that on another episode at some point. Yeah. It served its purpose. I'll say that. You ever notice that every children's game show had the same shitty prizes?
Yeah.
It was always you'd always get an Apple computer.
Yeah.
You'd always get an Apple computer, and you'd get an
Discman.
Yeah, maybe a Sony Discman, and you'd get an encyclopedia collection that the encyclopedia manufacturers probably just couldn't sell. Yeah. So this was probably their way of just taking a write-off and just, like, doing a charitable donation so that they could write it off.
Yeah, well, the prizes that they friggin', like, always put up were, like, it was, like, a dollar value of, like, $100, basically.
Yeah, it was always stuff that nobody wanted. Like, the kids on the show were, like, 12 at best. Sometimes they had, like, a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, but it was things that none of them wanted except for maybe the computer.
Yeah.
But the computers were so slow back then. But, I mean, we had more patience. I'll say that.
We didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know better back then.
We didn't know that that you'd be able to get things very quickly.
We didn't know that we would have a phone in our pockets that's more powerful than the friggin' computer that they brought with them to the moon.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even call it a phone. It's a little computer.
Exactly.
That's really all it is. We carry little computers in our hands every day.
Yep. That was like the kind of the theme of the 90s too, is that everything was getting a fucking game show or something somehow. Mm-hmm. Like
this also got Christmas albums and things like that too. It got various soundtracks.
Yeah. I also want to point out that the new Tales of the Crypt Keeper, that was another theme of like 90s cartoons.
Yes.
Is, like later seasons or like remakes would always be like the new something. Like the new adventures of the Ghostbusters or something like that. Or like the new adventures of Batman and Robin, you know?
Right. And this was always if there was a delay in production. Like like Tales from the Crypt Keeper, I want to say it was like 95 and 96 or 94 and 95. One of those shows, one of those in conjunction.
Yeah.
When the show aired, and then 1999 it got it got brought back to TV, and it was branded as the new. And this happened with anything. If there was like if there was at least like 2 years in between, like when the last show was, they always called the new one the new, whatever it is, which is helpful to differentiate. And I wish they would do that with movies now, because you'll get movies with the same title, but it's a sequel, and they put like a 4 or something for the word 4 or something. Yeah. It was like always something stupid where it's confusing, and you have to spell it different, and it gets on my nerves. It would be nice if they just did the new whatever it was going to be.
The New Adventures.
Yeah, speaking of New Adventures, this series had been attempted to be rebooted a few times, and it just, like, in more recent years, and it hasn't quite worked. I will say that the original TV show won a ton of, it won quite a few awards, multiple years in a row, 3 consecutive years. Of the Motion Pictures Sound Editors Golden Reel Awards. It won 91, 92, 93 for Best Sound Editing. And 94 won the American... So 4 years in a row, this whole thing just won. 94 was the American Cinema Editors Eddie Award for Best Edited Half-Hour Series for Television for the episode People Who Live in Brass Hearses. Which I guess is supposed to be a play on People Who Live in Glass Houses. And then it had various nominations pretty much throughout the show's entire run, minus 1989, for Emmys and Young Artist Awards and CSA Awards and all that other stuff. It was a well-beloved and well-loved show. However, you can't get Tales from the Crypt on HBO Max or anything. I'm very
surprised of, and I kind of am thinking maybe that they have plans for it, and that's why they haven't put it out yet.
I mean, reportedly, it's due to licensing issues. Because Tales from the Crypt, because I believe the name of the production company, I think, is Tales from the Crypt Holdings or something like that, where they're just having trouble obtaining the rights, which I guess they just want more money that HBO Max is not willing to shell out, which I guess it'll be Discovery Max or all Discovery in a few months. I don't even know. But they're hemorrhaging money like crazy. So I could see why they wouldn't. I could understand why they wouldn't want to shell out the money for this, but I feel like they're missing out right now, it being October. So shame on them. Exactly. You can watch the animated series on Tubi for free, but there's a bunch of ads. You can also watch Tales from the Crypt, which is
YouTube.
Also on Tubi, but you can watch the Tales
from the Crypt.
Yeah, that's a movie series about crypts and gangsta life. I'm not making that up, but you can watch the Crypt Keeper episodes on YouTube right now. There's a couple of channels. Yeah. One of them, it's like Crypt Glam or something like that. Some guy who has a odd glam band. I suggest that you watch those, because at the end you'll hear a little bit of his music and he'll plug his albums, and it's picture Kiss if it was a black metal band. It's weird. It's so good on you, Crypt Glam.
Well,
they've tried to reboot this a few times.
I think they could probably reboot it now and be successful, because of, like, you had the success of, like, American Horror Story, and Black Mirror is fairly successful. I think the Tales from the Crypt, like, is due for a reboot. And
especially now that American Horror Story has the American Horror Stories show that is it's a total, like, the whole season is an anthology of different episodes about that follow their own various storylines that aren't tied to a coherent thing for the whole season.
Yeah, it's so like American Horror Story kind of did it, but they did it like with a season-wide kind of anthology. You know, it was like every season is different, doesn't follow the same storyline.
Right, but the spin-off now every episode is a different story.
Yeah. And Black Mirror, I have never watched Black Mirror, but I've heard that it's basically the same thing. It's like an anthology series that has all these different...
It's a much darker Twilight Zone, I would say. I haven't seen a lot of Black Mirror, but I've probably seen like 5 or 6 episodes through, like, and I've enjoyed just about every one of them.
Yeah,
they are very cool. I for whatever reason I don't watch it religiously, but I really like that show.
I gotta check it out. I've heard good things about it.
It is very cool. Some of it is just like very realistic, where you're like, "Oh God, this could happen."
Yeah.
So that's maybe that's what's holding me back. Is just some stuff might like.
Every time like something like crazy like with technology happens like in real life, everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's just like a Black Mirror episode." You know? So
like there's the craziest one is one of the crazier ones that could realistically happen and does happen is it happens in like China and is the social credit score episode.
Oh yeah.
Where it just the entire world has the social credit score, so this person ends up getting locked out of everything that they can possibly do by, I think, a doppelganger, basically. So it's like identity theft in like the most in like the worst possible form, because it's someone literally stealing your identity and just trashing your reputation and ruining your life because of a social credit score. Yeah. But they've tried to reboot this show at least twice. In 2011, they tried to do it. The original fellow who produced the series, Gilbert Adler, was working with this guy Andrew Cosby. And they were trying to do a new one, and it was going to be a continuous story as opposed to an anthology. And for some reason, they weren't going to keep the Crypt Keeper. The problem in both of these is that neither of these reboot attempts were wanted to feature the Crypt Keeper, which is the most iconic element of the show. And if there's one thing that you keep, it's the Crypt Keeper, because he's all over it and he's synonymous with it. He is the only recurring thing throughout the entire lifespan of the Tales from the Crypt franchise. I have no idea why you would say, "Oh, well, we'd like to do Tales from the Crypt," but, you know, and then they'd say, "Oh, well, you're going to get," or like, "Well, who's going to be the Crypt Keeper? You're going to keep John Cassier, right?" And no, there's no Crypt Keeper. And then, what's the difference between that and any other anthology show? No, we're not going to do an anthology show. Well, it's going to be a continuous story. Oh, like an American Horror Story. Well, we already have one of those. What? Yeah. Why don't you put the Crypt Keeper? No, we don't need the Crypt Keeper. I think you do, pal. So that was unsuccessfully shopped to whatever major networks would not take it, and I can't say that I blame them. If you're going to do Tales from the Crypt without the Crypt Keeper, then you got nothing. I'm sorry, pal. Yeah. And then in 2016... allegedly, M. Night Shyamalan was going to do a reboot as part of a horror block that TNT wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it would have been full of twists. No turns, just twists. And it was going to be, like, in 2017, there were going to be 10 episodes. This one was at least going to stay as an anthology. But again, no Crypt Keeper. I don't understand why. And of course, they did not move forward due to legal rights concerning the rights for characters from Tales from the Crypt holdings, which means they were probably like, no Crypt Keeper, no show. Yeah. Screw you. And again, I don't blame them. If you're doing the Tales from the Crypt, you need to have the Crypt Keeper. Because you built a brand off of the Crypt Keeper. That's your mascot. You need to have the mascot there. Otherwise, like I said, there's nothing that separates it from anything else, and anything else that it's competing with is just going to look better by default. Because if all you have is just if all you're doing is basically just buying the name, there's no interest because there's no integrity there, and anyone who's nostalgic, they would have crashed and burned immediately, because anyone who was nostalgic for the show would have seen the ad. They would have said, "Oh, I can't wait to go watch this," and no Crypt, and then they turn it on, and they're waiting for the Crypt Keeper after 20 years of not having the Crypt Keeper in their home or digital media device. They're waiting for the Crypt Keeper. They're waiting for the Crypt Keeper. They're waiting for the Crypt Keeper. Possibly an hour. They're waiting for the Crypt Keeper, and the Crypt Keeper doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Half of the people are already tuning out and never coming back after episode 1. Episode 2, maybe they'll put the Crypt Keeper on this time. You wait an hour. No Crypt Keeper. Half of those people are gone. By the time you're up to episode 3 and 4, you either have the few people who never really watched the original one and are just kind of watching it because it's on TV, or you have people who were just still kind of holding on because maybe there's something remotely there that they like about it, or there's just some people that actually do just like it more than they like the original for some reason. But at that point, you're a quarter of the audience that you started with at best. So it would not get picked up for a second season, I'm sure. And I highly doubt that it would I don't even know if it would make it through the entire season without getting canceled.
Yeah.
Unless they brought back the Crypt Keeper and just said, you asked for it and we listened, so here's the Crypt Keeper. But at that point, it may even be too little, too late. Yeah. And I have no idea. But if they do revive the Crypt, the Tales from the Crypt, which I think they could do, I think the right network and the right I think the right streaming service. Let's be honest. It would go to a streaming service. If the right streaming service got the right... and if it came to the right streaming service and the right crew was behind it, and they got John Kassir to reprise his role again as the Crypt Keeper, and they brought back the Crypt Keeper, and only if they brought back the Crypt Keeper would it possibly work.
Yeah.
You can't revive Tales from the Crypt without the Crypt Keeper. Yeah. It just simply will not work.
No. Yes, that's 100% correct. It needs to have the Crypt Keeper, and preferably voiced by
John Kassir.
John Kassir, yeah, because otherwise it would be just fucking not the same.
No.
You know, I don't know if John Kassir still does voice acting or still appears as the Crypt Keeper in anything, but, you know, if he is retired, he is kind of out of retirement.
I don't think that he is retired. He was also the voice of Scrooge McDuck after the original voice actor passed away in 2016, and he's not Scrooge McDuck now. They they rebooted it and they got another guy. But yeah, he's 64, born in Baltimore, Maryland. Actually, his ex-wife was quite hot, Miss Julie Benz. She was an actress. But yeah, as far as I know, he still does a lot of stuff. He was a comic for a while. And he's most known, obviously, for the Crypt Keeper and just his voiceover work. Yeah. But he still does stuff. He does a lot of video games. He also like a lot of the big voice actors. For some reason, he pops up in like smaller parts in major Hollywood movies, which I hate that happens. Yeah. But it happens. Like he's in Despicable Me 3. He was in The Secret Life of Pets 2. He was in the new Despicable Me. You get the good roles. You get the good roles in the video games, and then when it's the actual movies, for some stupid reason, they'll shoehorn you into like a bit part. I'm not which hopefully that'll change at some point. I'd like to think it will, but it'll probably take a while. But he has done quite a bit of work since. He is just mostly known as the Crypt Keeper. But I believe he could still do it. I'm sure he pops up at appearances and he still does it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, they would, if they were going to reboot it, they would bring him back then, because, I mean, it's pretty obvious you need to have the Crypt Keeper to make it work, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and there's no way that he couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like I said, if the right streaming service chose to bring it back, they and hired the right crew, the right writers, and of course John Kassir, I think it would be great, and I think people would really enjoy it. Oh, he recently was the voice of the Crypt Keeper on Solar Opposites.
Okay.
Yeah, so he still does it.
Yeah. All right, so then he should fucking do it, and
it's not up to him.
It's up to him.
It's partially up to him. He has to agree, otherwise there's no reason. But
listen, he needs to fucking walk into the Disney Plus fucking executive's office, walk right up to the desk and say, "I'm the fucking Crypt Keeper, bitch."
But he has to do it as the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
And he has to walk in, the puppeteers have to walk in as the Crypt Keeper, and he has to just be behind them.
Yeah.
He can't, they have to bring the Crypt Keeper into the room.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me see if there's any other news in 2022 about it. There's rumors, actually, of a Tales from the Crypt reunion as of, Sunday. This past Sunday.
Oh.
There was rumors of a Tales from the Crypt reboot. This is enmediamass.net. I don't know how true this is. I hope it's not a bot or an ad. Oh, nope. Update what? Okay, this is update as of tomorrow. Yes. Okay, so this is a fake news website.
Oh.
Rumors of reunion claim that HBO confirmed a revival of this for 2023. Update as of tomorrow. Yes, it says 10/26/2022. We are recording at 10/25/2022. So maybe it's maybe this website is maybe it originates in a different country or something. But this is fake. The ads got me. Botchamania. All right. Well, don't trust me ever.
Yeah.
But I suppose maybe there's just been a bunch of people hoping for a reunion, and sometimes fans just floating around saying, "Oh, it'll happen," but no. It looks like the only thing that's really brought back the Crypt Keeper has been the Solar Opposites Halloween special. That's true. And nothing else. Nothing else. Hopefully we'll do it. Hopefully they'll do it at some point before John Kassir leaves this mortal coil and becomes the Crypt Keeper in real life or afterlife.
Yeah.
But we don't know. And if it's revived, I only hope that it's revived if the right people are involved. Otherwise, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I will have to watch the Crypt Keeper, Demon Knight, and Bordello of Blood movies. There was supposed to be a third, but it did not happen for whatever reason. But HBO had ordered a third, and it didn't happen. I actually do want to listen to the Have Yourself a Scary Little Christmas album and the Monsters of Metal compilation, just for the little Crypt Keeper incentives. By the way, this has nothing to do with the Crypt Keeper, but speaking of albums and recordings that don't seem to make any sense, I found the My Cousin Vinny Vincent Gambini album on Spotify. It's called Vincent Gambini Sings Just for You. We talked about it on the My Cousin Vinny episode a few pods ago. Yes. Check that out. There's a lot of interesting info that I bet you never knew about this movie in there. But I took a listen to it, and it's freaking hysterical. It's basically Joe Pesci just singing, like, just attempting to sing and sometimes rap, and just basically it's just him telling people to go fuck themselves for an hour and a half, for about 45 minutes. It's quite funny in multiple languages. It's quite a hoot. It cracked me up, and it's now in my regular rotation. So sometimes I'm working at my 9 to 5, and I've got this blasting in the back, and it makes me feel good, and I can get on with my day.
Yeah.
So I would recommend you check that out. But I will be playing the Have Yourself a Scary Little Christmas album while I decorate my tree this year.
Nice.
I'm not sure if the missus will approve of that, but I'm going to do it anyway. At least for 2 songs, and then we can listen to anything except for Mariah Carey. And I also no longer like the Elton John Christmas song because I heard it in too many stores, one after the other, after I was shopping one year, and I could not escape that song. Where it wasn't like the Mariah Carey song where it's just on all the time everywhere and it's just inescapable. This one was following me, and after a while it got stuck in my head, and I started singing it in the shower when I didn't want to. And I did not have a fun time. I was trying to get rid of it, but it just kept getting stuck in my head. And there was nowhere I could go. I would say, okay, I need to get out of the house. So let me go get a cup of coffee. Guess what's on in the coffee shop? I'd leave the coffee shop, no coffee in hand, and I'd go to Rite Aid. Just to get some air and have a change of scenery. But no, guess what's on in Rite Aid? Elton John's Christmas song. So I would have to leave Rite Aid. At this point, I'm a little frazzled. So naturally, oh man, I'm stressed out. I should go to the gym. Can't do that while you're on the treadmill because Elton John's right there wishing me a Merry Little Christmas with his manservant Kyle. I don't know if that's the lyrics of the song, but I imagine that at some point during his lifetime, he had a manservant named Kyle. Just a hunch. But so I left it. So I would leave the gym, unable to get my workout in, looking like a schmuck in the cold, wearing my gym shorts, freezing, no coffee. So I'm very cold. I'm also tired. I'm also getting all verklempt. I can't even do my Christmas shopping because, let me go to Century 21. Can't do that. Well, now I really can't because the Century 21 by me closed and there's nothing there. It's just a barren wasteland. And I went into that Century 21 and guess what's on the loudspeaker? No, not just Mariah Carey, who is there all the time and is inescapable, but it's Elton John wishing me to have myself a merry little Christmas with his manservant Kyle. Just not gonna happen. Tried to go to another store. Elton John. I think you know where this is going. Every store that I went into that particular weekend, not the day, the weekend. And it was a long weekend, let me tell you. Elton John was everywhere I went. Kind of like other songs that do that to you. Such as, what was the one that started following me again yesterday? I was in the supermarket. Don't You Forget About Me. That is constantly stalking me. And it's always the worst possible song because the song itself is a meme and I'm shopping. It's like the groceries are talking to me.
Maybe the universe is talking to you with these songs.
It's telling me, but who am I not to forget about?
I don't know.
Maybe it's talking about me, not forgetting about me. Maybe it's the universe saying, you need a little bit of you time. Don't forget about you, Chris. Don't forget about your mental health. This would be a great plug for Better Health, but they're not a sponsor, so I'm not going to do it. If you're having mental problems, well, I don't even know if that's the right term, but if you're not feeling great, maybe just don't use BetterHelp unless they're sponsoring us, which in that case, go right ahead. But until that happens, I would say figure it out. Find a nice way to therapeutically heal. Go for a nice walk. Go for a swim if you could get to a pool. Or if you live in a beach town, why not just sit by the sand as the sun comes up and just take it in? Or, I don't know, go to the park and roll around. Unless, of course, you're allergic to pollen, maybe don't do that. Maybe go back to the beach. But maybe crabs bother you in multiple ways. So maybe you don't go to the beach. Maybe you just go for a nice walk. Or maybe you're afraid of cars. In that case, don't go for a drive. Whatever it is that's bothering you, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Or you won't. Not exactly BetterHelp, but it could be if they would sponsor if they would sponsor us. If you are a struggling psychologist looking to spread the word about your practice, we're pretty affordable. Sponsor the show. And if you're a mortuary or a funeral home or even an entire cemetery, and you're looking to get sponsored, and you need someone to push your message, we're desperate, and it's Halloween. Why not sponsor Why Does This Exist? If you've got a small business of your own, why not give us a call, or an email, or anything? Maybe even send a comment on our YouTube channel. Maybe slide into our DMs on social media. We're very affordable.
Hey, it made us sound like friggin' like sex workers or something.
10s and 20s.
Ugh.
That's the show, kiddies.
That is
We
the
hope
show.
that you've enjoyed our episode on Tales of the Crypt. Perhaps down the road we will maybe review the Scary Little Christmas album. We actually haven't done a Christmas album. That would be interesting to do. Maybe not this one. Maybe we'll tease them a little bit. And then now we really sound like sex workers.
Yeah.
If you want to get pictures of our feet, no, we don't do that. But if
you're paying,
like we said, if you've got a small business and you need a sponsorship, we're very affordable. But if you we hope that you enjoyed this episode on The Crypt Keeper. We hope you learned a bunch of things about a show that you love and enjoy. And if you haven't checked it out, well, we hope you check it out. Perhaps we will get to the Crypt Keeper movies at some point. Who knows what we're going to do next Halloween. But we thank each and every one of you for checking out the show. All jokes aside, it means a lot to us. We're glad we can keep doing this show. And, if you like what we're doing, do all the things we mentioned. Share our stuff. Give us multi-star reviews. Go to our YouTube channel, Why Does This Exist with a question mark, and do all the things. Or just simply go to patreon.com/Why Does This Exist and just, give us some money. You get access to the Discord server, and we can hang out. Maybe we'll even put you on the show. How does that sound, friend? All right. Well, this has been Why Does This Exist? We wish you a very, very, very happy Halloween and safe as well. I have been Chris.
I have been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.